Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to break down a pretty chilling report from the Human Rights Council of Balochistan. It looks at the events in the region over the course of just a single month, April 2025.
All right, let's just jump right in with the single biggest number from this report for April, 168. And what that number represents is the count of individuals who the report documents as having been forcibly disappeared, allegedly at the hands of security forces and intelligence agencies. But, that's not the only number that jumps out at you. The report also highlights a second, very stark figure, 67.
Yeah, 67. That's how many people were reportedly killed during that exact same 30-day window. And the report draws a direct line between many of these deaths and state actions.
So you hear this term, forcibly disappeared, and you have to ask, what does that actually mean? And what does the report tell us about what happened to these 168 people?
Well, the report is very specific about this. It's a legal term, really. It describes a situation where a person is taken into custody, but then the authorities just deny it. They refuse to say where the person is or what happened to them. They're effectively erased, leaving families with absolutely no information and no legal way to find them.
And this chart really breaks down what happened to them by the end of April. As you can see, the vast majority, a staggering 112 people, were simply still missing. 42 were eventually released. But tragically, the report also states that 13 were killed while they were in custody.
So who were these people? Well, the data shows that students were the biggest group targeted, by a long shot, 50 of them. But look at the rest of this list. It includes a whole range of everyday working-class folks, from laborers and shopkeepers to a poet and even a local law enforcement constable. Okay, so we know who was taken. The next logical question is, how? How did this happen? The report gets right into the mechanics of these alleged abductions.
And when you look at the data, a pretty clear pattern emerges. The most common method, by far, was house raids. Think about that, 108 incidents. Then you have another 53 people taken right out of public spaces, with a few others taken at checkpoints or even summoned directly to a military camp.
And the report doesn't just stop at how. It also names the groups it alleges are responsible. The Frontier Corps, or FC, is cited in 92 of these abductions. Intelligence agencies are allegedly behind 44 of the cases, and the Counterterrorism Department, or CTD, is named in 31.
Numbers and charts are one thing, but they can feel a little abstract. The report also shares some of the individual stories, and that's when it all really hits home.
Take the story of Kia Baloch. He's a 20-year-old English literature student. He was taken from a hotel, and get this, it was the second time this had happened to him in 2 years. The report does note that, thankfully, he was released a few days later.
And here's another tactic the report alleges is being used, going after family members. We see the case of Mir Bashir Ahmed, who's the father of a prominent activist. The report claims he was detained specifically to put pressure on his daughter because of her political work, to try to get her to surrender.
This next story, it makes a really tough point, and that is, even if you're released, you might not be safe. This is Bakhtiar Mari. He was held for 7 days by the FC. When he got out, he had severe injuries. Injuries the report alleges were the result of torture. He died not long after.
And that story is a tragic bridge to the report's other major finding. We've talked about the disappeared. Now let's talk about the 67 people who were killed in April, and the direct line the report draws connecting these two phenomena.
Okay, to understand this next part, there's a term you really need to know, and the report uses it a lot. It's fake encounter. Basically, this is a term used to describe a situation where security forces kill someone they're holding and then stage the scene to make it look like it happened during a real gunfight or some kind of legitimate operation.
And the report gives a really stark example of this. It details a military operation on April 19th where 5 people were killed. Now look at this. 3 of those 5 were later identified as individuals who had already been documented as forcibly disappeared. One had been taken just a week before, another months prior.
And sometimes, the timeline is just shockingly fast. The report documents the case of Nadir Baloch. He was taken from his home during a raid by the FC on April 6th.
His body was found in a deserted area the very next day. So when you step back and look at the breakdown of all 67 deaths, the report links the majority of them to official actions. These alleged fake encounters make up the largest single category, with 21 cases, followed by other categories like alleged encounters and custodial killings.
And all of this, it leads to what might be the biggest challenge the report points out, and that's just the profound difficulty of figuring out what's true when you have the official narrative on one side and the accounts of the victims' families on the other, and they are worlds apart.
This quote from the report just says it all. It really gets to the heart of the anguish these families are living with. They're in this constant state of fear, made so much worse by official silence. Every time an unidentified body turns up, they're left to wonder, could that be my son? My husband? My brother?
So we're left with the final, lingering question this report forces us to ask. When a person is taken into custody, disappears, and is then later reported dead in some kind of encounter, how can anyone ever truly verify what happened? What does the path to truth and to accountability even begin to look like in a situation like that?